Hello, everyone, and welcome to the fourth Avon and Somerset Police Federation podcast. You can see today, if you're watching or if you're listening, I can tell you that today we are joined, as usual, by the Chair of Avon and Somerset Police Federation, Tom Gent, but also joining us is his colleague, our colleague, the wonderful Mollie Flood, who is your victim and witness support officer. And she's been in that role since January. So today on the podcast, we're going to be talking about Mollie's role and what that entails. We're also going to talk, because the week we're recording this is Response Policing Week, and we're also going to talk and discuss the NPCC and their pay plans for you police officers, and also their plans to tackle the amount of rest days that you take and the way that you take them. So a busy day today. Hello, Tom. Hello, Mollie. And we're going to start off by talking to Mollie, if that's all right. Mollie, a new voice for our podcast. Mollie, explain to us what your role is with the Federation.
So my role is a broad role, and it's evolving as we go forwards. But essentially, we've kind of realised within the Federation that we just haven't been supporting our victims and our witnesses. And that's quite a broad term. We could be talking about witnesses for misconduct or gross misconduct, or victims of assaults, or victims of sort of what we're calling blue on blue incidents, so officer on officer incidents of sort of bullying or discrimination, or in extreme cases domestic violence or sexual assaults. There's been a lack from the Federation as a whole in supporting those officers. So the force have been really proactive and have released me from duties to do this full time. So I've got to be thankful to the chief for doing that. But yeah, it's great at the moment. I'm loving it.
So the role is a new role. Obviously, people, and we have to say these are allegations, they're not necessarily proven until, but everyone deserves that support. I guess a criticism, if we're being fair, of the Federation in the past was that perhaps you supported those who were accused of doing something better than you supported those who were the accuser. Is that a fair comment, Mollie?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think we as a force, and I don't think PSD would mind me saying, we were good at getting the information from the victims that would come forward and from the witnesses. But once that information was obtained, the witnesses and victims were kind of left to then just stew and wait for an update. There was no kind of extra support that was given to them. And it can be a really stressful time. You don't know what's going on. It's long. Some of these misconducts can take years until you get a phone call to say you need to attend a hearing, and you haven't really got a choice. You have to go, and that can be a really scary place to be if you've got no sort of independent support to talk to.
And Tom, from your perspective as chair of the Federation, why was this an important role to create and be filled by someone such as Mollie?
Yeah, it is a really important role, and we're one of the first federations to have it, which is great, I think. And there has always been that gap. I remember a female officer I was supporting, she'd been through the whole thing before as a victim, and then it happened again in our force, and she said there's no way I would want to come forward again, because some of it is, and some of it isn't always about just the support that the force can give. Some of it's about the processes and guiding people through the processes as well. Because there's a survey done that said, I can't remember the exact percentages, but a really high percentage of people wouldn't report misconduct again. And we do want people to have, when you're victims of things, to have confidence and have that support. There'll always be a place for the Federation to support people who've been accused of things, because you are innocent until shown that something's happened. Plus, also, we really believe in fair processes, and we haven't always seen that in the past. But we want all officers to have confidence that the Federation kind of represents them, if you like. So we got really strong internal Chinese walls, so people can't. If you're supporting a victim and someone else is supporting the officer who's been accused, you can't talk to each other about the case and things like that. So it's a really positive role, and actually we see it as quite broad, going beyond just that internal stuff. Actually, how we support officers who've been assaulted, things like that. We want to do some work there. People who are victims of hate crime, we know there's probably a lack of support there. All of those sort of things. So the role is evolving still.
That's interesting to hear. You say the role's evolving. How, I hate to use the word busy, but how in demand have you been, Mollie, or has the role been since January?
Yeah, it's been steady, and it's been interesting to see what we're classing as kind of victims. I've just done my post-incident procedure course, so I'm now looking to support all of our key police witnesses after some of the most horrendous incidences that can happen that could result in a member of the public either dying or being seriously injured. Those officers that have witnessed that or be part of that are going to go through a process which is horrendous. So I'm looking to take on, and they can be sometimes sort of like 10 officers involved in that, and they need that support. But it has been busy. I've got quite a lot going on, and it can evolve into grievances if officers don't think they've been supported well enough, and everything. But yeah, it is busy.
And I think the other thing as well is kind of pushing the force on some of those things, because it shouldn't be the Federation doing that. And to be fair to the Force of Art, we do have things like sexual misconduct advocates, things like that. So it's working with them, working with our occupational health unit, and bringing kind of at that higher level, making sure that sort of all the structures are in place, sort of holding Force to account a little bit for that.
Yeah,
well.
yeah, it's
And
definitely.
have either of you had any interest from sort of other areas of the country around this role? You know, say you're one of the first. I don't know of many others who have something sort of specific, a full timer as well. Someone, you know, as you say, Mollie, released from their role. Do we know of any interest or anyone sort of using you as the guinea pigs, as it were, see how it's going?
Yeah, so we are part of, there's 7 of us around the country at the moment that are doing this role. The other ones are doing it alongside their full-time role. But us 7 are kind of piloting it and creating it, but other forces are desperate to get on board. I was at the wellbeing seminar a while back, and I mentioned it to some of the chief constables of other forces, and they were really keen to get involved, because the force want people to feel supported to bring this information forwards, so that it's definitely needed.
It's a core responsibility of the Police Federation, is it not, to look after colleagues, whether, as Tom says, whether they're accused of something or whether they saw something or have reported something.
I
sounds like quite a big gap that's been filled.
I don't think a lot of people, sort of, especially our younger in service officers, realise that if you are the witness of something that's happened, like a misconduct or a gross misconduct, there's a huge responsibility on you as the witness to go through the process. There's not really an opt-out option, and that can be really daunting. You're basically pulled into a process that you don't know anything about, and you don't really want to be in it, and it can be really scary and really long.
And we should emphasise also as well within all of this that the vast majority of police officers are fantastic. They're working hard. They're doing brilliant work. And there is sadly humans who do some bad things who are employed as police officers every now and again. So that is a point, you know, I think it is worth us getting across in this podcast. Tom, you know, to those officers, you know, if stuff happens and they are witnesses, they've got some support now. I think that's important to emphasise, isn't it, Tom?
It is, yeah, and I think having that independent support from the force is really important as well, and that goes for victims as well, because sometimes you do want that confidential conversation with someone you really trust, who is a little bit separate to the force and the professional standards department, to help navigate that. And yeah, you're absolutely right. Witnesses, that there is a big gap there with support for witnesses, so we can advise people kind of what you do and don't have to do. You don't have to do everything that you're told necessarily. It'll depend on the specific circumstances, but we've obviously got that in-depth knowledge, and that would go for witnesses, as Mollie said, post-incident procedures, things like that, where we're really keen. We support officers. We're fantastic on the night. We give fantastic support. Feedback's always great, but then sometimes in the weeks and months and years after, it is difficult if someone's not under investigation, so they don't naturally have a Fed rep assigned for misconduct investigation. We sometimes aren't giving quite as good a service to those witnesses as we'd like. And some of what they've been through and the trauma they've seen can lead to sickness and things like that, where they need that support and it's not always there. So it's a really important role in those instances as well.
And I think final one on this, if I may, what would you say to colleagues who wanted to get in touch with Mollie, or is it simply email the Federation? What should they do if they want to raise something with Mollie?
Well, Mollie, I'll let you answer
that. So at the moment, I think my name's just getting around because I'm getting pinged left, right, and centre on Teams. I'm having referrals, which is great. I'm having referrals straight from PSD, which is really nice because they've obviously seen that they've got a victim who's vulnerable, and PSD can't offer them what they want to offer. And instead of kind of sending them back to their station, they're putting them in contact with me. And I think that's really good. But there is going to be, I think, a formal process coming out as part of our pilot. We're trying to get together a referral system that we can kind of put into a main central mailbox, but that's later down the line. But at the moment, you can just email the office, email me, or Teams me. I'm always on.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Mollie, for highlighting your role, and I'm confident that and we'd like to get you back on a future podcast in a few months' time, and perhaps have another look at the demands that you're under and how that, as you've mentioned, how the role evolves, because I wasn't personally aware that you were going to help people from the PIP process as well. So that's really interesting, and I think be interested to see how that, in 6 months' time or so, how that role has evolved then. So we're going to keep you on there because we never know, you might have some nuggets to add to some of the other bits that we're going to talk with Tom about now. We'll start off with the demands that response police officers are under. I'm just going to look at the stats here. We've just got some new stats from a survey of around 1,900 police officers, and I'm going to speak slowly as I try and dig them up. And they're stating that, he says, here we go, they're stating that then they're very stretched and the demand is relentless. That's the paraphrase, but the stats are 91% say they've got staff shortages, 76% say that their demand is high. I'm not sure what the other 24% are saying, but there you go, they're happy. And 52% say response policing is not working well. What's your response, Tom, if you pardon the pun, to all of that?
Well, I mean, firstly, response police officers should be valued so highly. Everyone enters, or not quite now, actually slightly changed, but everyone previously entered policing as a response police officer, and it's so important. They're the ones who are out there 24/7, earlys, late nights, often really short staff, just making the system work so we get out to the public. But the pressures are under, I mean, there's no doubt. You just quoted some figures. When I go around the stations, the pressures are under is, it's never ending. It's relentless. Too much work, not enough officers. We're already beginning to get worried about the summer. We know that demand goes up in the summer, and those response officers at the sharp end, if you like, go to all kinds of jobs. You never know what you're going to deal with.
What's the solution, though, Tom?
What's the solution?
We can highlight that they are stretched and the demand is too much. What's the solution? Because we haven't got a magic cupboard of officers that we can suddenly drag out to throw into response policing. So what can we do to help our colleagues, help your colleagues?
Well, firstly, recognition of kind of response policing should be the jewel in the policing crown, really, but that hasn't always been the case. It has been under-resourced compared to other areas of policing. Certainly in our force, we're under-resourced overall, so I think the government need to recognise that. They can look at funding formulas, but overall, nationally, we know policing needs more funding as well. Pay and conditions, absolutely, we need to be looking at that. The shift allowance, for example, is really small compared to any other profession that does shifts. You're not getting very much extra for doing those night shifts and antisocial hours. So pay and conditions is part of it. Managing workloads, supportive leadership, welfare. We talked about Mollie's role. Those are the other bits that are really important. Looking after officers, the amount of trauma they go to, they need to be looked after. Occupational health units appropriately resourced, things like that.
Mollie, just from your perspective, you obviously have been, I'm sure, a response police officer, and you obviously have colleagues and friends who are in that role. What are they telling you? What are they saying?
They're telling me they're tired, they're exhausted. It's relentless. It's a sticking plaster. Stick the plaster on, get to the next job. Yeah, I think they're feeling overwhelmed and not appreciative. And at the end of the day, if any one of us calls 999, they're the ones that are going to arrive. And I don't think we, as not just our force, but as a country, appreciate them as much as they should be. And they're so young in service now as well. They're being expected to run far before they can walk. But yeah, and they are amazing at the end of the day. What they go to, what they deal with, it's just, yeah, I've got massive respect for them.
That's very well said, Mollie. And Tom, you obviously will, will recognise, I'm sure, a lot of response police officers at your awards in October as well, because as Mollie says, they are under the cautions, and recognition for the work they do is incredibly important, surely.
Yeah, absolutely, and recognition of what they do is really important. So yeah, we've got our recognition event in October, so I'm sure response policing will be well represented there. But when we're looking for Response Officer of the Year nominations as well, as is one of those categories. So
send them in if you've got them. You've not got long left. I think you've got till mid-May, my friends. So depending on when you're watching or listening to this, you've got a few weeks left, or a few days, depending. Well, this sort of talk about recognition and pain condition leads us on to our final sort of main topic of the day, which is the National Police Chiefs Council and what they are requesting of the government for police officers in the 2026 pay round. Now, two things we should discuss today is the 2.5% they think that you are worth of a pay rise this year, remembering when the Federation has asked for 7. So there's quite a big discrepancy between what the officers on the front line are requesting and what those in the ivory towers, for a better word, think you should get. Conveniently enough, the Home Office thinks you get 2.5% as well. It's amazing how they pluck these similar figures out of the sky. And then obviously the second point, which is caused a bit of consternation, a bit of anger, I think it's fair to say, is the attack has been described as on your rest days, and nationally there is a campaign calling hands off our rest days. I know, Tom, you've already been quite vocal about this as well. Explain, because it is a bit technical, but explain what, particularly regards to rest days, what Chiefs are trying to do.
Yeah, okay, well, first of all, I'd say it's not just the MPCC. They like to be this kind of faceless blob almost when they come up with things like this, but this is chief constables, including our own. They all support this, so they individually they support this, and that's important to say. So with rest days particularly, and that does, I mean, the percentage is always arguments every year about what is affordable and what are they worth and things like that. But the rest days in particular, I find really concerning. And it may be that our force are supportive and welfare focused, but that might not always be the case. And as soon as you've reduced those protections, then that's gone forever.
So what are they trying to do, Tom? Explain to us what they're trying to do.
Yeah, so they're looking at reducing the minimum payment for, say you were kept on after your night shift into your rest days. At the moment, you're entitled to 4 hours minimum pay at time and a half. They're looking at reducing that to time and a third for however long you do. And we will absolutely see that be abused, people not being relieved from constant supervisions, people told to stay on and finish their paperwork, their handovers, their deal with prisoners in custody. And I always remember having to stay on after, bearing in mind you worked a night shift till 7 a.m. and then not being released to go home and start effectively your weekend, if you like, you'll do your days off. Is a big issue, and the only reason at the moment we do try hard to, there'll always be times where you have to stay, and of course there will, but we do try hard to get people right. It's partly for that financial thing, and the force don't want to pay the 4 hours, so removing that I think is a big deal. There's also protections around your rest days. So, for example, if we have a big protest like we see quite often in Bristol, actually, in our force, they could cancel loads of rest days. So we need all these officers, and then what they're proposing at the moment, if they would have to honour those overtime payments and those rest days, but what they're proposing is the day before, if they haven't bothered planning it or some more intelligence comes in, they could say, actually, you can all have your days off back. We're not paying any overtime, and you've had to maybe sort out childcare, had all your plans ruined and all that, and the force are just like, well, tough luck, really. And I can see that happening.
It's absolutely outrageous, isn't it?
Yeah, and the way they're couching it as welfare, I think, is I struggle to see the logic in that, if I'm honest. So there are some other proposals where you could argue, actually, where they're talking about you must re-roster your rest days when you work and things like that. I can see the logic behind, it could be welfare there. But those two proposals in particular that I just mentioned, I mean, there's no logic at saying that supports welfare. There's just not.
It's rife for abuse, isn't it? I mean, Mollie's nodding away. What's your view on this, Mollie, just to get a different opinion?
Yeah, it's really worrying, the way that they feel that they can just change all your plans for those rest days. Obviously, I'm a mum of 2 young children. My husband's on traffic. He's working shifts. If my rest days get cancelled, I'm having to pay for childcare, and then to be told the day before that, oh no, you're not needed anymore, here's your rest day back. Well, I can't just go to nursery and reclaim the money. It's massive. I think it's just another way of them. It's a lack of respect to me. It's our rest days, our time isn't worth much to the force, if I'm honest.
What can you do, Tom? We can be vocal about this, we can get angry about this, but what actually can you do? Because, if this was happening to firefighters, or I sit here in London and we've got a week of tube strikes ahead, which will be over their terms and conditions. With a tube strike, I never know what they're striking over, but they're striking over something. Yeah. The point being, they have the ability, firefighters would not stand for it. So we've seen junior doctors go out last week or whenever that was. You can't do that. We know that. So what can you do?
Well, I think we do need to demand to be treated fairly. Some of that will be those conversations with government MPs, people like myself individually. I think and it's been good, actually, that the rest day campaign by the Federate, the first time we've sort of really gone to chiefs and held them to account a bit. So you're supporting this. It's the first time it's been this widely discussed in our force. I think the pay submission by the chiefs. So making sure people are aware of these discussions and what's going on and what officers need. Highlight the fact that you talk about affordability, but then the cost of officers leaving is so big, and that lack of attention, the cost to the public. Are we keeping the public safe if our experienced officers are having to leave because of their pay condition? All of those arguments are really important that we make them, and we show.
What's your chief officers? I don't want you to break any confidences here, Tom, but what of you've obviously raised this issue, I'm sure, with your chief officer team. What are they saying to you?
I think probably a little bit taken aback we're being so vocal about it this time. Probably not actually that close to the NPCC submission, if I'm honest. But then that doesn't bother me. It's if you don't support it, say you don't support it. Otherwise, you do, and don't hide behind collective responsibility, because that is supporting it. They're probably not even saving that much money from the rest day proposal, so I'll be very surprised if they win that argument, because our argument is so strong against it. And I would hope next year they will take a good hard look at their submission and what they're asking for next time.
Is there not also an element here of losing the dressing room, essentially? Like, you're not sticking up for your troops. You can talk a good game and say how much you care, and we talk about welfare and well-being, and we're going to release Mollie to do her role because we care about cops. And then on the other hand, you're trying to, and I'm going to use this word, you might not want to use it, you're trying to screw them. You're trying to screw their time and their days off and their pay. It's not a good look.
No, there absolutely is that contradiction there, which I find difficult, if I'm honest. Particularly around the rest day things. I understand the chief has to look at affordability, what she can deliver, but you need to value your workforce. They're the ones delivering for you. We talked about response officers not being recognised, things like that. That's where we need to invest.
Okay. Well, a lot discussed today, team, and I think some really interesting points that that we will need to revisit, I think, in future podcasts and down the road, because there's a lot of questions and not as many answers as we hope. But these things do come out, and as I say, the Rest Days campaign is firing, and I think is being listened to and heard. So we'll keep that up, I'm sure. Mollie, thank you for joining us today. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we let you go? We probably won't see you next month, but we hopefully will see you later on in the year. Anything else you'd like to add, Mollie?
Thanks for having me. I'm always on. Just drop me an email, drop me a Teams, even if it's just to have an independent rant about something. I love a good rant, so
I'll be sure to take you up on that, Mollie. I've got a lot of grievances at the moment, so I'm sure I'll be emailing you as well as your colleagues. But thank you for your time. And Tom, anything else you'd like to add before we let you go this time round?
No, not really. Just particularly to those response officers this week, just stay safe, look after each other, support each other. Your teams are so important, and yeah, we are fighting for you.
Tom, Mollie, thank you very much. We'll see you on the next edition of the Avon and Somerset Police Federation podcast.
Take care.